The last thing Dravencore expected on his first day on Mars was to become a viral sensation. Then again, he hadn't expected to lift a city bus over his head either. It began as most legendary tales do, with terrible timing and worse luck. The year was 2275, and humanity had long since expanded beyond the confines of Earth, or Terra, as it was now commonly called in the interplanetary community. Draven had arrived at the Utopia 7 transit hub, a massive orbital station serving as the primary gateway to the red planet below. Fresh from Earth's higher gravity and eager to make his mark in the Interplanetary Powerlifting Championship, he'd been advised to spend at least a week acclimating to Martian conditions before attempting any serious lifts. The transit hub bustled with activity, a chaotic blend of species from across the solar system and beyond. Vexari merchants with their characteristic blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes haggled over shipping rates. Caprellian tourists, tall and willowy, with an almost plant-like appearance, photographed everything in sight with their implanted ocular cameras. And everywhere, the efficient but often brusque Martian natives moved with the quick, confident strides of those born to lower gravity. Draven stood out even among this diverse crowd. At 6'5", with shoulders twice as broad as the average Terran, his physique was the product of decades of dedicated training, genetic optimization, and the unforgiving pull of Earth's gravity. His dark skin gleamed under the hub's artificial lighting, enhanced by the bioluminescent tattoos that traced the major muscle groups, a fashion popular among elite Terran athletes. The tattoos pulsed gently with each heartbeat, a cool blue that contrasted with his warm brown eyes. "Express shuttle to Olympus City departing from Platform 9 in 15 minutes, announced an automated voice in Standard, followed by translations in 12 other languages. Draven checked his transit pass on his wrist implant and headed toward the designated platform, pulling his luggage behind him. The crowd thickened as he approached the central transit area. Unlike the smooth, effortless people-moving walkways of Earth spaceports, Utopia 7 relied on a more robust but decidedly less comfortable system of gravity-adjusting platforms. These grav plates compensated for the orbital station's rotation, creating a consistent sense of down for passengers. But they required manual navigation. For newcomers like Draven, the experience was disorienting. He carefully stepped onto the main concourse, feeling the subtle shift as the artificial gravity adjusted to his mass. Around him, beings of various shapes and sizes jostled for position, some floating slightly due to their lighter weight. A pair of Ganymede diplomats, recognized by their characteristic silver environmental suits, drifted past, barely touching the floor. "Watch it, Terran!" hissed a Vexari merchant as Draven accidentally stepped into his path. The 4-eyed alien clutched his case of rare minerals protectively. "Your kind always takes up too much space." "Sorry," Draven mumbled, trying to make himself smaller, an impossible task given his frame. He'd been warned about the prejudice he might face. Earth's higher gravity produced naturally stronger beings, and throughout colonial history, Terrans had occasionally used that strength to dominate. Though those days were largely past, the stereotypes persisted. Terrans were brutes, muscle-bound thugs too dumb to use anything but their strength. Draven reached Platform 9 and joined the queue for the Olympus City shuttle. The vehicle itself was impressive, a sleek, tubular craft designed to transport up to 50 passengers through Utopia 7's protective atmospheric shield and down to the Martian surface. Unlike the clunky, radiation-hardened shuttles of the previous century, modern transit buses featured panoramic windows of transparent neocarbon, offering passengers spectacular views of the descent. The line moved slowly as passengers presented their credentials to the automated systems. Draven noticed a group of Caprellian tourists ahead, chattering excitedly about visiting the famous Olympus Mons Museum of Colonial History. Behind him, a harried-looking human woman juggled 3 bags while trying to keep track of 2 small children. "Mommy, "Look at that man's arms," one of the children exclaimed, pointing at Draven's biceps. "They're bigger than my whole body." "Shh, Ellie, it's not polite to point," the mother said, offering Draven an apologetic smile. "Sorry, she's never seen a professional powerlifter before." Draven grinned, flexing playfully for the wide-eyed child. "Training for the Interplanetary Championships," he explained. "First time competing off Earth." "You'll have an advantage here," the woman said. 38% Earth gravity on the surface." "That's what I'm counting on," Draven replied. "Though the officials have gravity compensators in the competition zones to level the playing field." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion above. A metallic groan echoed through the cavernous space of the transit hub, followed by shouts of alarm. Draven looked up to see one of the station's secondary launch platforms, a massive structure suspended from the ceiling, shuddering violently. The stabilizing cables that anchored it to the main structure were fraying, sparks flying as emergency systems failed one after another. Warning klaxons blared. "System malfunction detected. All personnel clear Section 5 Alpha immediately," announced the station's AI, its normally calm voice pitched higher with programmed urgency. Passengers scattered in panic. But the platform directly below the failing structure, Platform 9, where Draven stood, was quickly becoming a bottleneck. The Olympus City shuttle was already docked, its doors open as passengers struggled to board in the suddenly chaotic environment. Draven watched in horror as the final stabilizing cable snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The secondary platform lurched downward, tons of metal and composite materials beginning a deadly descent toward the crowded shuttle bay. Time seemed to slow. Draven's training kicked in, the thousands of hours spent pushing his body beyond normal human limitations, the countless repetitions of perfect form under crushing weights. Without conscious thought, he shoved his way forward, calculations running through his mind. Mass, acceleration, force required. "Everyone get back!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. Passengers scrambled away as he planted his feet firmly on the deck, directly beneath the falling platform. The mother with the two children stumbled, her younger child falling to the ground. Draven reached out with one massive arm, scooping the child up and practically throwing her into her mother's arms. "Go! Now!" he bellowed, and the woman ran, clutching her children. The shuttle bus sat directly in the path of the falling debris, its passengers trapped inside with nowhere to go. The vehicle's emergency systems had engaged, locking its doors to prevent decompression if the hull was breached, a safety feature now trapping dozens inside. Draven had seconds to act. He reached the bus just as the platform crashed down, striking the roof of the vehicle with enough force to shatter several of the panoramic windows. The bus groaned under the weight, its anti-gravity cushions failing as emergency power diverted to life support. With a roar that was more primal instinct than conscious decision, Draven positioned himself beneath the crushed section of the bus. He bent his knees, planted his feet, and reached up, fingers finding purchase on the crumpled metal of the undercarriage. "Come on," he growled through clenched teeth. "Come on!" The bioluminescent tattoos across his body flared from cool blue to incandescent white as his muscles engaged. Veins bulged across his forehead and neck as he summoned every ounce of strength his Terran physiology could provide. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. The bus continued to crumple under the weight of the fallen platform. Then, millimeter by millimeter, the descent slowed, stopped, reversed. Draven straightened his legs, pushing upward with a force that defied belief. The bus rose. Inside, alien passengers stared in horror and fascination at the sight of massive human hands pressing against the floor, lifting the entire vehicle. With a final surge of effort that threatened to tear his muscles from his bones, Draven hoisted the bus clear of the fallen platform debris. He stood fully upright now, the entire weight of the 20-ton vehicle held aloft over his head, arms trembling but steady. "Open the emergency exits!" he shouted, voice strained. "Everybody out! I can't hold this forever!" Inside the bus, the passengers snapped out of their shock. Emergency hatches popped open, and aliens of various species began pouring out, jumping the short distance to the platform below. Vexari businessmen, Caprellian tourists, Martian natives, all fled the precarious safety of the suspended vehicle. A security officer, his uniform insignia identifying him as Ceres Station Security, likely on assignment to Utopia 7, was recording the entire scene with his implanted camera. "Holy shit," he whispered, the footage streaming directly to his department's servers and, whether intentionally or not, to several public news feeds. The last passenger, an elderly Vexari using a mobility assistance device, cleared the bus just as Draven's strength began to fail. With a controlled movement that spoke of years of training, he lowered the empty vehicle to the platform, setting it down with surprising gentleness given the circumstances. As soon as the bus touched down, Draven collapsed to his knees, lungs burning, muscles screaming in protest. The station's emergency response teams were arriving now, medical personnel rushing to attend to minor injuries among the evacuated passengers. A slender Vexari in medical attire approached Draven, scanning him with a handheld diagnostic device. Her 4 eyes blinked in synchronized concern. "You are experiencing severe muscular microtears and dangerous levels of lactic acid buildup," she said, her standard accent melodic despite the urgent tone. "I am Dr. Arya Vol, Chief Medical Officer for this section. You require immediate treatment." Draven tried to respond but found he couldn't form words through the pain. Dr. Vol pressed an injector against his neck, and blessed relief flooded his system. "Temporary analgesic," she explained. "The damage is extensive but not permanent. Your Terran physiology has remarkable recovery capabilities." There was something in her tone, not the disdain he'd grown accustomed to hearing from non-Terrans when discussing human strength, but genuine scientific curiosity. As the medical team helped Draven onto a stretcher, he caught fragments of conversation from the crowd that had gathered around the scene. "Did you see that? He lifted the entire bus." "Impossible mass-to-strength ratio. Must be using some kind of enhancement tech. Typical Terran brute force. He saved everyone on that bus." The last thing Draven saw before the pain medication pulled him into unconsciousness was the Ceres security officer, still recording, a look of awe on his face as he mouthed what looked like, "This is going to break the net." He wasn't wrong. Draven woke to the antiseptic smell of a medical bay and the soft hum of monitoring equipment. His entire body felt as though he'd been run over by the bus, rather than having lifted it. A quick glance around confirmed he was in a standard medical recovery pod, thankfully one designed to accommodate larger Terran frames. "Ah, the hero awakens," came a voice from his right. Draven turned his head, a movement that cost him more effort than it should have, to see a human man lounging in a visitor's chair, a holographic press badge hovering over his chest. The man was perhaps in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a short ponytail and the casual attire favored by freelance journalists throughout the system. "Renzo Gen Kroman." The man introduced himself, pronouncing the nickname with a soft J, as in journey. "Independent News Service. Mind if I ask you a few questions about your spectacular feat of strength?" Draven tried to sit up, but was gently restrained by the medical pod support systems. "How long was I out?" "About 6 hours," Renzo replied. "Long enough for you to become the biggest story in the Martian system." He gestured to a hovering display screen, where footage of Draven's bus lift played on repeat from multiple angles. 17 million views and counting. You're a certified viral sensation, my friend." Before Draven could respond, the door to the recovery room slid open, and Dr. Arya Vol entered, accompanied by a severe-looking human in the formal attire of station administration. "The patient requires rest, not interviews," Dr. Vol said firmly. Her 4 eyes, narrowing at the journalist. "Please leave immediately." Renzo stood, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "Just making conversation with our local hero. No harm done." He winked at Draven. "I'll catch up with you later. Story like this isn't going anywhere." After the journalist left, the administrator stepped forward, his thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. "Citizen Corps, I am Deputy Chairman Navik of the Utopia 7 Administrative Council. I must inform you that unauthorized acts of intervention in station emergencies are strictly prohibited under Section 47 of the Station Safety Code." "Unauthorized," Draven began, but Navik cut him off with a raised hand. "Furthermore, the footage being circulated of today's incident is creating considerable distress among our non-Terran residents. Many find displays of extreme physical capability to be threatening." Dr. Vol's upper set of eyes rolled in what Draven interpreted as the Vexari equivalent of exasperation. "Deputy Chairman, this man prevented a major disaster, at significant personal risk. I might add." Navik's expression didn't change. "The Council appreciates Citizen Corps' intervention, but must consider the broader implications. We would prefer if you would refrain from discussing the incident with the press or on public networks." He produced a thin, digital tablet. "If you'll just authorize this non-disclosure agreement, the Council is prepared to waive any fines associated with your code violations." Draven stared at the tablet, then at Navik. "You want me to stay quiet about saving a bus full of people? Why?" "The platform malfunction was a rare anomaly that our maintenance teams had already identified and were addressing," Navik said smoothly. "The situation was under control. Your intervention, while well-intentioned, has created an exaggerated perception of danger in our station." "That's not how I remember it," Draven said. "And I'm pretty sure the passengers on that bus would disagree too." Navik's expression hardened. "The Interplanetary Powerlifting Championship requires proper authorization from local authorities, does it not? It would be unfortunate if your competition status were compromised due to administrative concerns. The threat was clear. Sign the agreement or forget about competing." "That is coercion," Dr. Vol said sharply, "and medically inadvisable. My patient needs rest, not legal pressure." Navik stepped back, his face a mask of professional detachment. "Consider your options carefully. Citizen Corps, the Council will expect your decision within 24 hours. He nodded curtly and left. As the door closed behind him, Dr. Vol made a soft chirping sound that Draven guessed was a Vexari expression of disgust. "Politicians are the same across species, it seems." "What's his problem?" Draven asked. "I just helped people." Dr. Vol adjusted something on Draven's monitoring equipment before responding. "The Administrative Council has been under scrutiny for maintenance backlogs. A very public system failure would raise uncomfortable questions." She paused. "Also, there are historical tensions. Some non-Terrans are genuinely uncomfortable with displays of Terran physical strength." "Because of the colonial wars," Draven said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Dr. Vol confirmed. "Though that was generations ago. Cultural memory runs deep. I should know. Vexari can literally inherit memories from our ancestors." Draven sighed, wincing at the pain the simple act caused. "Great. So I'm stuck between signing away my right to talk about what happened or losing my shot at the championship." "There may be a third option," Dr. Vol said thoughtfully. "But first, you need to rest. Your body requires time to heal." As she turned to leave, Draven called after her. "Doctor, thank you for standing up for me." All four of her eyes blinked in synchronized acknowledgement. "I believe in recognizing extraordinary acts, Citizen Corps, regardless of which planet they originate from." She paused at the door. "And what you did today was indeed extraordinary." After she left, Draven lay back in the medical pod, watching the muted footage of his feet still playing on the hovering screen. In the corner, Viewer statistics continued to climb. 18 million, 19 million. He closed his eyes, wondering what his training partners back on Earth would say when they saw this. He'd come to Mars to prove himself in competition, to show that Terran strength could be used with precision and discipline. Instead, he'd become a viral sensation for the very kind of brute force display he'd hoped to transcend. The medical pod's sedation protocols activated, sensing his rising stress levels, and Draven drifted into uneasy sleep as the counter ticked past 20 million views. By the next morning, the footage had spread across the entire solar system. Draven's medical pod had been upgraded to a private recovery room, a courtesy he suspected had more to do with controlling access to him than with his comfort. His personal communication device had been deluged with messages, congratulations from fellow powerlifters, interview requests from every news outlet from Terra to Titan, and even a few marriage proposals from admirers impressed by his heroics. But the message that caught his attention came from an anonymous sender, routed through multiple proxy servers to hide its origin. The Council is hiding something. Platform failure wasn't an accident. Evidence in maintenance logs. Deleting now. Be careful who you trust. A friend. Before Draven could contemplate the mysterious message, his door chimed and slid open to reveal Renzo Kroman, the journalist from the previous day. Morning, Hercules. Renzo greeted him cheerfully. Feeling any better? Draven carefully sat up, testing his muscles. The pain had subsided to a dull ache. Remarkable recovery time, even for his enhanced physiology. Getting there. How'd you get past security? Renzo tapped the press badge hovering over his chest. This isn't just for show. Plus, I brought breakfast. He held up a package of what appeared to be protein-rich food bars, specially formulated for Terran metabolisms. A thoughtful gesture, as most station food was designed for the lighter nutritional needs of Martian natives. Thanks, Draven said, accepting the offering. But I'm guessing you didn't smuggle in contraband food just out of kindness. Smart man, Renzo grinned, pulling up a chair. Word is, the Council's putting pressure on you to keep quiet about yesterday's heroics. That true? Draven hesitated. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Which means yes. Renzo nodded. Thought so. Look, I've been covering Utopia 7 for 15 years. The Administrative Council has been cutting corners on maintenance to fund their expansion projects. This isn't the first anomaly they've tried to sweep under the rug. You think the platform failure wasn't an accident? Draven asked, thinking of the anonymous message. Renzo's eyes narrowed. You know something. Just a hunch, Draven said carefully. But if you're right, why would they risk lives just to save credits? Politics, Renzo said simply. Utopia 7 is competing with Phobos Station for Interplanetary Transit Authority funding. Any safety incidents would jeopardize their bid. He leaned forward. But here's where it gets interesting. Your little display of Terran might has actually given them a perfect distraction. What do you mean? Check the feeds. Renzo gestured at the room's display panel. The story isn't about a dangerous platform failure anymore. It's about you. Half the system is calling you a hero. The other half is freaking out about dangerous Terran superstrength. The actual cause of the accident is buried under human interest stories and xenophobic panic. Draven activated the display and was immediately bombarded with headlines. Terran Titan, Powerlifter, saves dozens in Utopia, 7 miracle lift. Dangerous display. Should Terran strength be regulated off Earth? Physics defied. Scientists question possibility of bus lift. Colonial fears. Resurface. Non-Terran groups call for strength restrictions. Accompanying the headlines were images of Draven, many heavily edited to emphasize his muscle mass or add threatening red glows to his bioluminescent tattoos. This is insane, Draven muttered. I just helped people. Welcome to interplanetary politics, Renzo said. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Draven could answer, His door chimed again. This time, Dr. Arya Vol entered, her medical attire exchanged for more casual clothing that still managed to look elegant on her slender Vexari frame. "Citizen Core, she began, then stopped upon seeing Renzo. "I see you have company." "Dr. Vol." Renzo stood, offering a respectful nod. "Renzo Kroman, Independent News Network. I was just discussing with our friend here the political implications of his heroic act." "Then I have arrived at an opportune moment," Dr. Vol said. "I have information that may interest both of you." She held up a small data crystal. "The true maintenance records for the secondary platform, unaltered." Renzo's eyes widened. "How did you get those?" "I have access to the medical database, which includes structural integrity monitoring for patient safety purposes," she explained. "The records automatically back up to my department's servers, a redundancy the Council apparently overlooked when they purged the main system." Draven looked between them. "So you can prove the Council knew about the platform issues?" "More than that," Dr. Vol said. "The records show they specifically overrode automated safety protocols that would have closed that section for repairs 3 days ago." Renzo let out a low whistle. "That's criminal negligence." "Indeed," Dr. Vol agreed. "And I believe we have a moral obligation to make this information public." "Why are you helping me?" Draven asked, studying the Vexari doctor. "You could lose your position over this." All 4 of Dr. Vol's eyes focused on him, giving him the distinct impression of being thoroughly examined. "I come from a long line of medical practitioners, Citizen Core. My ancestors treated victims of the colonial wars, including many injured by Terran soldiers. Those inherited memories made me wary of your kind." She paused, her lower set of eyes blinking in what Draven was beginning to recognize as a sign of emotional processing. "But yesterday, I watched you risk your life to save others, many of whom were not Terran. You did not discriminate. You simply acted. It has caused me to reevaluate certain prejudices." Renzo cleared his throat. "This is all very touching, but we have a limited window of opportunity. Once the Council realizes the medical database has these records, they'll move to contain the situation." "What do you suggest?" Draven asked. "A press conference," Renzo said immediately. "Public, live-streamed, with no delay. You tell your story, Dr. Vol presents the evidence, and I moderate to ensure maximum coverage." "The Council will try to stop it," Dr. Vol warned. "Not if we don't give them time to react," Renzo grinned. "I have a broadcast studio set up in my quarters. We go live in 1 hour. By the time they realize what's happening, the information will be system-wide." Draven looked down at his hands, the same hands that had lifted a 20-ton bus less than 24 hours ago. He'd come to Mars to compete, to prove himself through controlled feats of strength in a regulated environment, getting involved in station politics, challenging the administrative council. None of this had been part of his plan. But then, he thought of the passengers on that bus, the mother and her children, the elderly Vexari with the mobility device. They could have died because the council cut corners. "I'm in," he said firmly, "but I need some clothes. Can't exactly hold a press conference in a medical gown." Renzo laughed. "Don't worry, big guy. I've got you covered." Exactly 1 hour later, Draven sat in Renzo's makeshift studio, facing a hovering camera drone. Dr. Vol sat beside him, her posture rigid with tension but her 4 eyes clear and determined. Renzo stood off camera, monitoring the incoming viewer count as the live stream connected to major news networks across the system. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. Renzo pointed at them, and a small light on the camera drone turned green. "Good morning, citizens of the solar system," Renzo began, stepping into frame. "I'm Renzo Kroman, reporting live from Utopia 7 Transit Hub. With me today are Draven Core, the Terran Powerlifter whose extraordinary feat of strength yesterday saved dozens of lives, and Dr. Arya Vol, Chief Medical Officer for Section 5 of Utopia 7. Renzo turned to Draven. Citizen Core, in your own words, can you tell us what happened yesterday at Platform 9? Draven took a deep breath. I was waiting to board the shuttle to Olympus City when I heard a loud noise from above. One of the secondary platforms was failing. The support cables were snapping. It fell toward the shuttle bus, which was already loaded with passengers. The emergency systems had locked everyone inside, so they couldn't escape. I just reacted, used my strength to lift the bus clear of the debris until everyone could evacuate. A remarkable display of heroism, Renzo commented. Dr. Vole, you treated Citizen Core after this incident. Can you explain the physical toll such an effort would take? Dr. Vole nodded. Based on my medical scans, Citizen Core exerted force equivalent to approximately 3 times the maximum recorded output of an enhanced Terran athlete. He suffered significant muscular microtears, dangerous levels of lactic acid buildup, and strain to his skeletal structure. In simple terms, he pushed his body far beyond safe limits. And yet, Renzo continued, the Administrative Council of Utopia 7 has attempted to downplay this incident and silence Citizen Core. Dr. Vole, you have information about why that might be? I do, Dr. Vole said, activating a holographic display from her data crystal. These are the unaltered maintenance records for the secondary platform that failed. They clearly show that the Administrative Council was aware of structural integrity issues 3 days before the incident. Furthermore, they manually overrode automated safety protocols that would have closed that section for repairs. The data scrolled in the air before them, technical specifications and work orders, annotated with administrative override codes. For viewers who may not understand the technical details, Renzo explained, what you're seeing is evidence that station authorities knowingly endangered lives to avoid service disruptions. The door to Renzo's quarters suddenly slid open, and 3 security officers burst in, led by Deputy Chairman Navik. His face was flushed with anger. Terminate this broadcast immediately, Navik demanded. You are releasing classified station information in violation of security protocols. Renzo smiled calmly. We're live across the system. Deputy Chairman, perhaps you'd like to explain to our viewers why the Council endangered lives by ignoring safety warnings. Navik signaled to the security officers. Confiscate all broadcasting equipment and place these individuals under station arrest for compromising public safety. As the officers moved forward, Draven stood. Even after a day of recovery, his massive frame dwarfed everyone in the room. The bioluminescent tattoos tracing his muscles pulsed with a steady blue glow. I wouldn't advise that, he said quietly. This information needs to be public. The security officers hesitated, clearly calculating whether they wanted to attempt to restrain someone who could lift a transport bus. Navik's expression twisted with fury. This is exactly the problem. Terran intimidation tactics, using brute strength instead of following proper procedures. Is the proper procedure to ignore safety warnings and endanger lives? Dr. Vole asked, her tone cutting. Because that appears to be the Council's policy. The confrontation was interrupted by a chime from Renzo's communication system. He checked the alert, then smiled broadly. Well, this is interesting timing. It seems the Interplanetary Transit Authority has just announced an emergency safety review of all orbital stations, effective immediately. He looked directly at Navik. They specifically cite disturbing evidence of negligence at Utopia 7 as the catalyst. Navik's face paled. That's impossible. How could they already? I may have sent copies of Dr. Vole's data to several key officials before we began broadcasting. Renzo said with a shrug. I'm a journalist. I cover my bases. You've exceeded your authority, Navik sputtered. All 3 of you are hereby charged with disrupting station operations and spreading false information. Guards, arrest them. The security officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but moved to comply. As they approached, however, a new alert sounded, this time on all their devices simultaneously. A system-wide notification appeared, bearing the seal of the Martian planetary governor. By executive order, the Administrative Council of Utopia 7 is temporarily relieved of duty pending investigation into safety violations. An interim administration will be appointed within 24 hours. All current security directives issued by the Council are suspended. The security officers immediately stepped back, lowering their restraint devices. "Sorry, sir," one of them said to Navik. "We answered a planetary authority first." Navik stared at the notification in disbelief. "This isn't over," he said finally, pointing at Draven. "Especially for you, Terran. The Council has friends throughout the system. Your competition days are finished." After Navik stormed out, followed by the now uncertain security officers, Renzo turned back to the still broadcasting camera drone. "Well, viewers, it seems justice moves quickly when evidence is irrefutable. This is Renzo Jen Croman, reporting live from a rapidly changing situation on Utopia 7. Stay tuned for updates." He signaled to end the broadcast, then collapsed into a chair. "That was closer than I'd like. The governor must have been watching our stream." "What happens now?" Draven asked. "Investigations, hearings, political reshuffling," Renzo shrugged. "The usual aftermath of a scandal. But Navik was right about one thing. You've made powerful enemies today." "He was also right that I used intimidation," Draven said quietly. "I didn't even think about it. I just stood up and everyone backed down." Dr. Vole studied him with all four eyes. "There is a difference between intimidation and presence. Citizen Core, you did not threaten violence. You simply refused to be silenced. That distinction matters." "Maybe," Draven conceded, "but it doesn't change the fact that my presence in the Interplanetary Championship is now controversial. The anti-Terran factions will use this to argue I'm dangerous." "Perhaps," Dr. Vole agreed. "Or perhaps you will change minds, as you have changed mine." Renzo's communication system chimed again. He checked the message and let out a low whistle. "Speaking of the championship, the organizers want to speak with you, Draven, urgently." "To disqualify me?" Draven asked. "I don't think so," Renzo said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "According to this, viewership projections for the event have quadrupled since your footage went viral. They'd be fools to cut you now." "They want to profit from the spectacle," Dr. Vole observed, her tone disapproving. "Welcome to entertainment sports," Renzo replied. "The question is, what will you do with the platform, Draven? Because you're about to have the attention of the entire solar system." Draven looked at his hands again, thinking not of their strength now, but of their purpose. "I guess I need to figure that out." The 2 weeks leading up to the Interplanetary Powerlifting Championship were a whirlwind. As Renzo had predicted, the competition organizers were eager to capitalize on Draven's newfound fame, featuring him prominently in all promotional materials. What they hadn't anticipated was his insistence that Dr. Arya Vole be included in his entourage as his personal physician, a request they grudgingly accommodated. The investigation into Utopia 7's Administrative Council revealed a pattern of negligence stretching back years. Deputy Chairman Navik and several other officials faced criminal charges, while the station underwent comprehensive safety renovations under the watchful eye of the Interplanetary Transit Authority. For Draven, the attention was disorienting. He'd trained in relative obscurity on Earth, known only within powerlifting circles. Now, he couldn't walk through any public space without being recognized. Opinions about him remained sharply divided. Many hailed him as a hero, while others viewed him with suspicion or outright fear. The morning of the championship. Draven sat in his assigned preparation area beneath the Olympus Mons Arena, the largest sporting venue on Mars. Dr. Vole monitored his vital signs, while Renzo, who had appointed himself Draven's unofficial media manager, briefed him on the day's schedule. "The qualification rounds start in 2 hours," Renzo explained. "Standard events, deadlift, overhead press, and the gravity variable lift. That last one's where you'll really shine. They adjust gravity during the lift to test adaptability." "I know the events," Draven said, trying to focus on his breathing exercises. "I've been training for them for 3 years." "Yes, but you haven't been training with a target on your back," Renzo countered. "Half the competitors have filed protests about your participation. They're claiming your unnatural strength gives you an unfair advantage." "Unnatural?" Draven scoffed. "I was born on Earth and trained in 1G conditions my entire life. If anything, I've had to work harder than lifters born in lower gravity environments. Perception matters more than reality in situations like this," Dr. Vole observed, adjusting something on her medical scanner. "Your viral moment has made you a symbol of Terran strength. Yes, but also of Terran potential for dominance." Draven started to respond when a tournament official entered the preparation area, a stern-looking Martian woman in the formal black and silver uniform of the Interplanetary Athletics Commission. "Citizen Core," she said without preamble. "The Commission has made a ruling on the petitions regarding your participation." Draven exchanged glances with Renzo and Dr. Vole before replying. "And you may compete," the official stated, "but under modified conditions. In addition to the standard events, you will be required to participate in a special exhibition, the Orbital Challenge." "What's that?" Draven asked. "It's not a standard powerlifting event. It has been specifically designed to address concerns about your unique capabilities," the official explained, her tone carefully neutral. "You will be required to lift a replica of the Utopia 7 shuttle bus, loaded with weight approximating your viral feet, under variable gravity conditions." "That's not powerlifting," Renzo protested. "That's a circus act." "It is the Commission's compromise solution," the official replied. "The alternative was disqualification based on safety concerns." "Safety concerns?" Dr. Vole interjected. "The medical data clearly shows Citizen Core's physiological parameters are within the enhanced but natural range for Terran athletes. The concerns relate to psychological impact on non-Terran spectators, not physical capabilities," the official clarified. "Many species find displays of extreme Terran strength distressing, given historical contexts." "And if I refuse this exhibition?" Draven asked quietly. "Then you will be disqualified from all events, and a note will be placed in your athletic record citing unwillingness to accommodate xenocultural sensitivity requirements." After the official left, Renzo exploded. "This is blatant discrimination. They're singling you out for being Terran." "They're trying to humiliate him," Dr. Vole agreed, her 4 eyes blinking in agitation. "Making him perform like a trained animal, rather than compete as an athlete." Draven stood, pacing the small preparation area. The bioluminescent tattoos on his muscles pulsed between blue and red, reflecting his conflicted emotions. "What if I just withdraw?" he wondered aloud. "Go back to Earth. Compete there?" "Then they win," Renzo said simply. "The anti-Terran factions get to say you couldn't handle fair competition, that you only perform when you can dominate. And the next Terran athlete who tries to compete interplanetarily will face even greater obstacles," Dr. Vole added. "Your case would become precedent." Draven stopped pacing, his resolve hardening. "Then I compete. I do their exhibition, but on my terms." Renzo raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "You said it yourself. Renzo, I have the attention of the entire solar system. It's time I used it." The Olympus Mons Arena hummed with anticipation. 50,000 spectators filled the stands, with billions more watching via stream across the system. The standard competition events had concluded, with Draven placing first in each, despite subtle adjustments to the equipment that seemed designed to disadvantage him. Now, the arena had been reconfigured for the special exhibition, the event everyone had really come to see. In the center of the arena floor sat a perfect replica of a Utopia 7 shuttle bus, mounted on a gravity-variable platform. According to the display screens around the arena, it was weighted to exactly 20 tons, the estimated weight Draven had lifted during his viral moment. Draven waited in the entrance tunnel, dressed in the traditional Powerlifter's uniform, a reinforced singlet in Terran blue, with compression supports at his major joints. The bioluminescent tattoos tracing his musculature glowed a steady, calm azure. "Remember," Dr. Vole said, making a final adjustment to his joint supports. "The gravity will start at Martian normal, 0.38 Earth gravity, but they can increase it to as much as 2G during the lift. Your cardiovascular system may experience significant stress if they exceed 1.5G. I've prepared compensatory stimulants if needed." Draven nodded. "Thanks, Doc. But I don't think they'll push it that far. Not with billions watching." "Don't be so sure," Renzo warned, checking the arena's systems through his journalist's access codes. "I'm seeing some unusual programming in the gravity controls. They've built in manual override capabilities that weren't in the original specifications, meaning they could change the rules mid-lift," Draven realized. "Precisely," Dr. Vole confirmed, "which makes your plan all the more important." Draven took a deep breath. "Is everything in place?" Renzo nodded. "Broadcast controls are slave to my implant. When you give the signal, I can override their feed filters. Every viewer will see and hear exactly what happens, without censorship or delay." "And the special guests?" Draven asked. "In position," Dr. Vole assured him, though some were hesitant to participate. "Can't blame them," Draven acknowledged. "All right, it's time." The announcement echoed through the arena. "And now, the special exhibition event. Please welcome Draven Core, the Terran Titan." Draven stepped out into the arena to a mixed reaction of cheers and nervous murmuring. The lighting followed him, highlighting his massive frame as he walked calmly toward the replica bus. The announcer continued. "Today, Citizen Core will attempt to recreate his viral feat under controlled conditions. The gravity will begin at Martian standard and may be adjusted throughout the attempt, testing the limits of Terran strength." Draven took his position beneath the bus, which was suspended a meter above the platform by temporary supports. He looked up at the officials' box, where the Interplanetary Athletics Commission members watched with expressions ranging from clinical interest to barely concealed hostility. "Whenever you're ready, Citizen Core," came the announcement. "The supports will retract on your signal." Draven raised his hand to indicate his readiness, then paused. Instead of assuming the lifting position, he stepped back and spoke, his voice amplified by the arena's systems. "Before we begin, I'd like to address something." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. This wasn't in the program. "I came to Mars to compete as an athlete, to test my abilities against the best in the solar system," Draven continued. "Instead, I found myself thrust into a symbol of Terran strength. Yes, but also of the fear that strength can inspire." He looked around the arena, making eye contact with spectators of various species. "I understand that fear. Earth's history with other worlds hasn't always been peaceful. Terran strength has sometimes been used to dominate rather than protect." The arena had gone completely silent. But strength itself isn't good or evil. It's defined by how it's used. When I lifted that bus on Utopia 7, I wasn't thinking about being Terran or proving anything. I was thinking about the people inside, people of all species who needed help. Draven gestured toward the officials' box. "This exhibition was designed to make me a spectacle, to emphasize my alienness, my Terran nature, to separate me from you. But I'd like to show you something different." He raised his hand in a signal. Around the arena, doors opened, and individuals began walking onto the floor. The passengers from the Utopia 7 shuttle bus, Vexari business people, Caprellian tourists, Martian natives. the human mother with her 2 children, the elderly Vexari with the mobility device. Dozens of beings who had been on that bus 2 weeks ago. "These are the people who were on that bus," Draven explained. "People who might not be here today if strength hadn't been used to help them." One by one, the former passengers took positions around the replica bus. The elderly Vexari approached Draven and spoke, his voice also amplified for the audience. "I have lived through 3 interplanetary conflicts," the elder said. "I have seen Terran strength used to destroy, but on that day, I saw it used to save, not just Terrans, but all of us." He turned to the crowd. "We must judge not by the capability, but by the choice." Draven nodded in thanks, then turned back to the officials. "I'll complete your exhibition, but not as a Terran lifting a bus, as one citizen of the solar system helping others." He positioned himself beneath the bus once more and gave the signal. The temporary supports retracted, and the full weight of the vehicle settled onto his shoulders. Draven's muscles bulged, the bioluminescent tattoos flaring from blue to white as he stabilized the massive weight. Then, as if responding to an unspoken signal, the former passengers moved in. Each placed their hands on the bus, not lifting. Most lacked the strength to make any difference, but joining in symbolic support. In the officials' box, someone activated the gravity controls. The indicator screens showed the gravity increasing, 0.5 g, 0.7 g, 1.0 g. The weight of the bus effectively doubling as Earth normal gravity was reached. Draven's legs trembled, but he held firm. The former passengers maintained their positions, hands on the vehicle, united in the effort even as the strain fell primarily on the Terran. The gravity continued to increase, 1.2 g, 1.5 g, well beyond the parameters discussed before the exhibition. Draven's breathing became labored, his face contorted with effort. "They're trying to make him fail," Dr. Vole said from the sidelines, her medical scanner showing Draven's vitals, approaching dangerous levels. "Then they've made a serious miscalculation," Renzo replied, watching not Draven but the crowd. "Look." Throughout the arena, spectators were rising to their feet, not in fear or anticipation of disaster, but in solidarity. A chant began, soft at first, then growing. "Together, together." On the arena floor, Draven heard the chant. His vision was narrowing, his muscles screaming in protest as the gravity pushed toward 1.8 g. The weight was becoming impossible, even for his Terran physiology, enhanced by years of training. Then he felt it, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The bus was becoming lighter, not because the gravity was decreasing, the indicators still showed it climbing, but because he wasn't bearing the weight alone anymore. Around him, the former passengers had been joined by others, arena staff, competitors from the earlier events, spectators who had jumped barriers to reach the floor, beings of all species, adding their strength to his. Most could contribute only a fraction of what his Terran muscles provided, but together, they made the difference. Draven found his second wind. With a roar that echoed through the arena, he straightened fully, lifting the bus higher. The gravity peaked at 2.0 g, twice Earth normal, more than 5 times Martian gravity, but it didn't matter. The combined effort of dozens of beings from across the solar system rendered the challenge manageable. In the officials' box, the Interplanetary Athletics Commission members watched in stunned silence as their attempt to humble the Terran transformed into a spontaneous demonstration of interspecies cooperation. Slowly, carefully, Draven and his impromptu team lowered the bus back to the platform. As the weight settled, the arena erupted in thunderous applause, a sound that transcended species differences, a universal expression of appreciation for what they had just witnessed. Draven stood in the center of the group, sweat pouring down his body, the bioluminescent tattoos on his muscles pulsing with an intense, joyful blue. One by one, Those who had helped clasped his hand, touched his shoulder, or offered their species equivalent of a congratulatory gesture. The announcer's voice, when it finally came, sounded stunned. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all designations, I believe we've just witnessed something historic. Renzo, who had made his way to the arena floor, approached Draven with a broad smile. Still broadcasting system-wide, he said quietly. Anything you want to say to a few billion friends? Draven looked around at the beings surrounding him, former strangers now connected by a moment of shared purpose, and found he did have something to say. Strength is never just physical, he said, his amplified voice carrying throughout the arena and across the system. Today, we all lifted together, different species, different worlds, different capabilities, but united in purpose. That's the real power. Not what one of us can lift, but what all of us can achieve together. The applause that followed wasn't just for a feat of strength, but for a vision of possibility. A solar system where differences in biology and history didn't have to mean division. As Draven left the arena floor, supported by Dr. Vol and surrounded by new friends of various species, he realized he'd accomplished something far more significant than winning a powerlifting championship. He'd helped change the conversation about Terran strength from a source of fear to a resource for the common good. The next day's headlines would tell the story in various ways, but the image that dominated feeds across the system was unmistakable. Beings of all species, united in effort, lifting a burden that would have been impossible for any one of them alone. 3 months later, Draven stood on an observation deck overlooking the newly renovated Utopia 7 transit hub. Beside him, Dr. Arya Vol adjusted settings on a holographic display, monitoring the data flow from the station's new Biophysical Research Center, a facility dedicated to studying the application of various species' natural abilities for practical purposes. The Caprellian photosynthetic enhancement protocols are showing promising results, she reported, all 4 of her eyes focused on the scrolling information. Combined with Terran muscle fiber architecture, we may be able to develop new medical treatments for degenerative conditions across multiple species. That's great, Draven said, though his attention was elsewhere. Below, in the main concourse, a mixed group of children, human, Vexari, Caprellian, and others, were gathered around a holographic display showing footage from what the media now called the Unity Lift. A teacher was explaining something about cooperative physics and biomechanical synergy. You're not listening, Dr. Vol observed, her upper set of eyes narrowing slightly. Sorry, Draven smiled. Just thinking about how much has changed. And indeed, much had changed. The Interplanetary Athletics Commission had been reorganized after the publicity disaster of the exhibition event, with new guidelines emphasizing inclusive competition. Utopia 7, under its new administration, had become a model for interspecies cooperation, with Terran engineers working alongside alien counterparts to improve safety systems throughout the station. Draven himself had declined several lucrative offers to join professional lifting circuits, instead accepting a position as the physical training coordinator for the first truly integrated emergency response team in the Martian system, a unit comprising members of all major species, each contributing their unique biological advantages. Dr. Vol, Draven, called a familiar voice. They turned to see Renzo Kroman approaching, his journalist badge now displaying the logo of a major interplanetary news network. Have you seen the latest approval ratings from the Interplanetary Council? We've been focused on research, Dr. Vol replied. Why? Renzo's grin widened. The Integrated Emergency Response Initiative has 94% support across all species. They're voting next week to expand it system-wide. That's unexpected, Draven admitted. A few months ago, half the system was calling for restrictions on Terran activities off Earth. Amazing what can happen when people see strength used to help rather than dominate, Renzo observed. Which reminds me, the network wants to do a special feature on the 3-month anniversary of the Unity lift. Any interest in an exclusive? Dr. Vole and Draven exchanged glances. Perhaps, the Vexari doctor said carefully. If the focus is on the research and practical applications, not personality. Deal, Renzo agreed. Though I should warn you, there's already talk of commemorating the event with an annual system-wide holiday. Unity Day or something similar. Draven shook his head, still finding it difficult to process how a moment of instinctive action had cascaded into such far-reaching changes. All I did was lift a bus. No, Dr. Vole corrected him, all 4 eyes focused intently on his face. You lifted more than that. You lifted a barrier, one that had existed in minds across the system for generations. Renzo nodded in agreement. Not bad for a Terran powerlifter who just wanted to compete off-world. Draven looked back down at the children gathered around the holographic display. They were now attempting to lift a small model bus together, laughing as they coordinated their efforts. None of them seemed concerned about which species could contribute the most strength. They were simply working together. Worth every muscle tear, Draven said quietly. Worth everything. As they turned to leave, his bioluminescent tattoos pulsed once with a bright, clear blue, not the glow of exertion or stress, but of purpose fulfilled. The Terran powerlifter who had once lifted a city bus over his head had found something far more satisfying to carry, a vision of a united future, built on the understanding that true strength comes not from dominance, but from cooperation. And across the solar system, that vision was taking hold, one lifted burden at a time.